All right, pressing record. Hi, Scott. Welcome.
Thank you.
We've got the class on here. You can see all their little faces.
Hi.
Hey, everybody. Nice to see you all. I'm just going to mute some of you and dive right in. So thanks for joining us and sharing today, taking the time out of your busy schedule and sharing with us your world and what you do and giving some insight to the people here. We have a lot of songwriters, we have some producers, and I know that one of the biggest hurdles through this course is creating songs and then getting them produced in a way that's really high enough quality and really sync friendly and fresh, and having producers on that are in that world who can really highlight how to do that and help get people to that state of fruition with their songs is so helpful. So thank you for taking the time to share.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just dive in. I'd love everybody to just kind of get an idea of who you are, what you do, your background in music, and how you work with artists and your songwriting and all of that.
Sure. So currently, I'm a producer for a music house called Gratitude Sound, and we focus mainly on custom music for advertising. And the other side of my business, which I've been doing for years, is artist development with an ear towards synchronization. So I'll go from the beginning. I started on some wildly unsuccessful tours as a piano player, guitar player. And when that got really tiresome, I came back to LA, and my first studio gig I was super lucky. I got to be the assistant to the music supervisor and composer for Sons of Anarchy from season 1, which was just like the absolute best mentorship that anyone could hope for, and the best, education in both the creative and administrative sides of licensing, plus what it takes to not only create music to picture, but produce music to picture. After that, my boss at the time and mentor set me up with a few artists to start MDing for them, and they all needed production work, so I was the likely candidate. And once some of their music started getting licensed, I was like, okay, this is the thing. So I dove in. I started my production company called Dark Moon Productions. I've been collaborating with artists and producing artists for about 10 years. I have a catalog of my own. And I turned my attention towards commercials about a year and a half ago, when one of my collaborators came to me for a custom job for a McDonald's pitch. And I'm like, cool, that sounds awesome. And then in the last 3 or 6 months, got lucky enough to partner with this well-established house on the East Coast. So I'm working with his roster of composers and artists to do mostly custom stuff for commercials. It's less licensing, more, here's our 30-second spot. Can you come up with a song that sounds like this? And that is me in 30 seconds. I'm also clearly very handsome and charming and have a 2-year-old son and a pregnant wife.
We know everything about you now. Awesome.
That's me.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing all of that. I think that so many things that you've touched on are of interest to our audience. One being writing for like those 30-second spots. Some people are composers in here and they want to figure out, how can I do something like that? They are maybe more in the instrumental world, or they feel like, I don't write full songs all the time. How can I write more for that original style thing? So maybe we could talk about that. And then also want to dive into the artist side of things and the licensing.
Sure. The composition thing, from a commercial standpoint, I think is hard to get into without being prompted a little bit. Like, I would have never thought to write a 30-second song that sounds, a little bit like Sharon Van Etten, mainly driven by acoustic guitar that tugs at the heartstrings, unless someone asked me to. So I think going to look at what is happening is the best way to do it. It's also important to try and establish, when you're watching commercials, try and figure out, was this a real song that someone licensed, or did someone sit down and compose it? Because there's a different approach. And if someone is looking for an artist and they're just going to go and license a song, they want their song, they want their artist. But if it's something that was custom, you can see, certain hits that accentuate picture, and it's a slightly different process. I don't know if I answered your question. how I got about getting into it is I sat down for frickin' hours and sent cold emails to music houses. Some of them told me to kindly F off, and some of them said, cool, you've got great stuff, and we'll hit you up if we need anything.
Persistent.
I was lucky enough to hit one or two small things, and it's, you know, I think if you can hit like 5%, it's a pretty good rate.
Yeah, that's huge.
You know, I was super lucky. This guy on the East Coast, you know, he and I had a little bit of success with me pitching through his company, and we hit it off, and he's like, let's just try and do this together. So now I'm trying to be a little bit more of the producer and less of the composer, because I do see behind the curtain a little bit as a composer, like what your odds really are, how many composers as an individual you're up against, and the long thread of creatives and business people that you need to make happy along the way.
Yeah.
It's pretty staggering, but persistence and like be educated, know everything you're trying to work at, and know what you do well, and make good music.
That's so important. Well, one, yes, make good music, and two, educated. So having people like you on who really understand how the play-by-play works, so that, you know, we kind of think like, oh, if I write this song about sunshine, somebody's going to place it in, you know, Kellogg's ad. But there's so many different pieces and parts that are a part of making that decision. And what are they really looking for? What's the brand looking for? What's the advertising agency looking for? How does that all work? And having some, you know, knowing people like you, having your insight from behind the curtain is so important. So thanks. And Tamara just said you switched to commercials about 1.5 years ago. What's the biggest change in your sound or technique that works better for commercials versus, you know, what you were doing?
I think that when I was working more for, sorry, 1 second. I think that the requests that I was doing, when I was doing film and TV, I got requests more often for denser, full-sounding productions, perhaps because there's lots of montages going on in TV today. And with commercials, unless it's going to be a big epic thing where the music is the focus, I oftentimes am getting asked for very sparse pieces to accommodate lots of voiceover work. So that's been a little bit of a shift for me. In terms of the tools I'm using, it's all the same. I mean, I like to work with lots of acoustic instruments and lots of in-the-box instruments and try and do hybrid productions that sound authentic, yet like they were created in 2018.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you feel or do you feel like there's some trends in terms of what is being asked for right now, what you're working on with the artists that you work with? Or is it just kind of across the board? You have different artists and you do all sorts of different sounds?
So I do work with lots of different artists, and I encourage them to try and sound like a licensable version of themselves. Like, don't watch commercials and say, okay, I'm going to do that. If that doesn't sound like you, it's not going to come across as authentic or good in any way. So I would say, like, don't get too caught up in trends. But certain trends will never change. You know, companies are always going to want to make their consumers feel whatever feeling it is that they think makes us spend money.
Mm-hmm.
John Lewis is always going to want to tug at our heartstrings around Christmas, and Chevy's always going to want to remind us of blue-collar America. The ways at which they go about that might change. I think finally there's maybe a little bit of a shift towards subtlety, and like we're not being bludgeoned to death with requests for like just stomp and clap through the whole song. And I think there's like maybe the folk requests are like a little bit less Lumineers and a little bit more Langhorne Slim. And the indie pop is maybe like a little bit more Sharon Van Etten or the Shacks as opposed to Sarah Bareilles. So I think it's taking a minute, but I think a degree of subtlety is which is nice.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that subtlety is the difference between getting a license and not, and working with the right person and not working, you know, having that person who has their pulse on the subtleties. So Sam is a producer, and he just wrote, at any point, did you have a manager? How does that help? If you did, how do you know when you're ready for a manager? So I think that's from the producer side. You know, did you have a manager as a producer, and did that ever help you?
I never have. I've had plenty of sync agents who represent my music. In fact, I've had the most success with other people pitching my stuff. But in terms of soliciting production work, I've never had a manager. After that first gig on Sons of Anarchy, things sort of snowballed a little bit, and I was always able to back my way into new work. I do think, however, like if you want to be like an in-house producer somewhere or a composer for a TV show, I do think you need a manager. I don't think that Scott Feldman is just going to get a call from ABC and they're going to say, hey, we've got this new thing. We think you might be the guy. I do think you need representation for that. Right. But for me, it's never come into play. And I'm not that concerned about it at the minute.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me see. I just missed a couple questions here. So Oz says, do you encourage your artists to perform the licensable work you do together, or do you just do productions as a work for hire with them?
I encourage them to treat every song that we do with an ear towards licensing, also treat it as an artist song. You know, especially with TV supervisors, they want to play A&R. So if you're not outperforming it and if you're not releasing it and if it smells and feels like production music, they're going to think it's production music.
Right.
Go sing it everywhere you possibly can publicly and make it artist music.
That's really great. I think that makes sense. Ernest says, in doing my research, I noticed that a lot of songs that get used on adverts are well over 3 minutes. Is it preferable to write songs that are longer, providing more material for the client to edit from?
I think having more to edit from is always better than it is worse. Sometimes, I think it depends on the situation. If they know when it's a custom thing, when it's a custom job, they usually want something that's specifically for their 30-second spot, and they want a hard entry and a hard exit. If it's something that it's like a 60, 90-second spot and they're going to weave music in and out, it's great to have lots of sections and length for the editor to chop up, for sure.
Yeah. So good. There's like such precise information that is, needed to fill in the gaps. So thank you.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever done anything this well in my life, so thanks.
Okay, Ernest says, nope, I've got that one. Okay. Darren says, are you co-writing with artists? Oh, good question. That you produce. If not, do you request part of the master? Or, you can talk about how your deals work, or you can just say.
So I do co-write with my artists, and we split everything down the middle, publishing and master 50-50. Even though I do the lion's share of the production, I feel like lets everyone make money and be happy. If it's a paid production client, I do everything in my power not to take a piece of someone's master. If they really want to work with me and we can't get the numbers right, perhaps I will offer a very discounted rate and say, let me own 50% of the master, and I'll also outline a buyback plan so they can at some point own their own master, because I think that's important. And I try not to take more ownership of someone else's creation than I've earned.
That's very fair. That's nice. Carrie says, it's really interesting to me that you offer those pre-production services. Sometimes picking which songs to work on is tough. What are your rates for something like that? Well, you can give your email and talk to each.
Yeah, I'd rather talk about that stuff one-on-one, which I'm happy to do. But when I do pre-production services, I generally bundle it with the production service. I think that's part of it. I'd rather give you my advice on why I think these are your 3 best songs to produce for what you want to accomplish. That way you're getting the most from your money. Just makes good sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's not usually like an extra fee, as opposed to the person who comes to me and says, I want to do these 3 songs. This is it. I don't charge them less than the person who says, here's 20, let's figure out what to do. I think it's all part of the package.
Nice. Super fair. You're getting accolades over here. It's very helpful, real wisdom. What about non-advertising syncs? I guess
screenshot this, I think.
What about non-advertising syncs? Maybe she's referring to like TV, film, sort of. Nancy, maybe you want to elaborate a little bit of what specifically you want to talk about there. And Maestro says, what file audio quality are you printing at? 16-bit, 24 wave, or MP3?
I always do 24/48 wave and an MP3.
Good. Nancy says, yes, TV series or film. Maybe if there's like, what advice do you have about TV series or film writing?
So for film, I'm actually pretty limited in my knowledge. I had a few songs that were up for a major motion picture that ended up on the cutting room floor. In terms of TV, I think it's all, I'm sure Sonnet has said this as well, it's all about how you package yourself and approach music supervisors, you know? You got to get them on your side, and you got to pitch relevant music, and you got to make yourself as easy as is humanly possible to work with.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have those waves and MP3s and a 60-second, 30-second, 15 and 6-second version of your song, but someone else does, and it works, you know, pretty much just as well, they're going to go with that guy. I will say, in all honesty, that I have had little success, and I've come from a TV world. I've had little success pitching myself in film and TV. Most of my placements have come through third parties who have figured out the methods to that madness a little bit better than I have.
Speaking of that, Kalia says, we've discussed sending cold emails in this course. You mentioned you sent lots of cold emails when submitting music. What works well in emails? And when you received emails, what are some, and when you receive emails, what are some of the faux pas?
So I should have been more organized when I was sending all of these cold emails and sort of seeing, okay, this chick got back to me when I said this guy told me to fuck off when I said this, so don't do that and do this. But I didn't, to be honest. I tried to be succinct. I tried to have some understanding of what they were currently working on. I obviously never sent any files. You know, I don't know that I have the answer of what works. I think be yourself, be honest, be humble, be to the point, you know. When people send me emails, I pretty much read and listen to everything. I think the only faux pas is like not knowing who they're actually emailing, you know.
Yeah.
When they email me at my Gratitude Sound email address, which they clearly found through this commercial house, and they're asking me about something that's completely unrelated, I will not get back. Because I think the very least you can do is a little bit of homework.
Yeah, great point. And I think that being succinct, doing your homework gets you really far. So when you're emailing somebody and you don't sound like you know who you're emailing, why are they going to take the time to write you back?
Yeah, and these people have like vendors like us clamoring at them every day. I know like every time I write an email and I pour over it for a half hour, 45 minutes, I'm like, this is the absolute perfect email. At the end of the day, it's just one of 65 that this dude is getting today with the same exact request from other dudes that probably have also really good music. So you got to understand that, you know, on a good day, this is a subjective industry. You know?
Yeah, it's a great point. Who are two producers that you love and why?
George Martin is my sort of everything. Those Beatles albums with his string arrangements and reversing tape, that stuff I still do in the box. You know, I'm not doing it with real tape, and I wish that I had the opportunity and the money to. But when I listen to those recordings, that is what really moves me. The other guy that actually doesn't really get credit for being a producer is Keith Richards of the Stones. Phenomenal guitar player, but he also had a huge hand in making those albums sound the way they sound.
Wow.
Love him.
That's cool. Is there any market for original orchestral music?
Trailers. I think that one of the things I'm trying to do with my commercial house is build a trailer-specific library, because it's a little bit of a different game in terms of the content you need to have and the people you need to know and the people you're pitching to. But there's definitely a need for that. And I mean, production libraries in general will take your orchestral music, because you never know when there's like like we did one last year for some file sharing company, and it was like a comedic thing, but they wanted this huge orchestral piece, to sort of juxtapose with this farce of a commercial. So sometimes it gets used in what we're doing, but it's not an often request.
Cool. What is some of the advice that you would have for indie artists? Let's go with a songwriter artist who's trying to get their songs finished and produced and then start pitching them for sync, but also, staying true to themselves. Would you have any specific advice that you'd give them? Because I know you also do like artist development and that side of things. What are some of the things that you might recommend to keep in mind?
I think that it's important to compartmentalize and do one thing at a time. Most companies, and as a songwriter, you're a little company, right? Most companies don't have to create the product, figure out the marketing, and then go out and sell it.
Yeah.
They usually get to, have the creator do this, the marketing team do this, and the biz dev team do this. So I think it's important to still keep those versions of yourself and do one thing at a time, because it's very hard if you're like soliciting licensing companies and say, oh, I'm about to finish this album. I'd love for you to listen when it's done. They don't care. Just send them the music when it's done. Spend the 6 months or however long it takes to finish that music and get it done. In terms of working on music that's both commercially viable and true to yourself as an artist, I think that most artists who are writing in a popular genre have a very licensable version of themselves in there somewhere. It's whether it's the version they truly want to hear as an artist. And I think at the end of the day, you need to just sort of be honest with yourself about what you want. I have like a list of 40 songs that I love, and they're songs that I wrote that I care deeply about, but I know that as a capitalist, I cannot monetize today. And those are my hobby songs. This is my job, like I'm a freaking lawyer, Every time I'm working on a project that's paying me, that's my law degree going to work. When I get a free minute to drink some whiskey and work on the songs that I love and care about, that's my hobby. I have the luxury of not trying to be an artist, so I can make that separation and do it and not worry about it. I think if you're an artist, I think the first thing would be to try and find that licensable version of yourself where you feel comfortable with both sides. And if you can't, then figure out a way to compartmentalize. If you still believe you can make money doing music, then go write things you don't care about and do the thing you do care about on the side, and don't worry about whether anyone else wants to listen to it or not.
That's great. Yeah. What are some of the sound libraries? We're just jumping around here, but I think that your advice is really spot on. And the more that I think that you can bring in parts of who you are as an artist into the work that you do, the more it comes across and the better chances you have of standing out when somebody is listening to your music. I know when I get that music, we get submissions all the time. You want it to be good. They want you to be great. And so you just have to hit those licensable markers, but also be who you are as an artist so you stand out. And I think that's really good points that you brought up there. What are some of the sound libraries that you like as far as having a current sound?
There are two libraries right now that are my absolute favorites. One is this British company called Spitfire. They make a library for Contact. They do killer strings, brass, percussive stuff, pianos. Hans Zimmer has done a library for them. And then, what is the other one? Oh, Output makes a suite of sounds. They have a killer vocal sampler called Exhale, great little string patch, excellent synths, super modern sounding, and actually pretty affordable too.
That's awesome. Okay. I love that you're getting, the output is great. Thanks again. Their stuff's amazing. Yes. So Irina says, that's my all-time dilemma, how to stay true to yourself and make it commercialized at the same time. And what I will say, I'm gonna let you go into this too, is just that there's a learning curve. It's not just that like, then you just get there, like even Kathy, with all of her success, wrote tons of songs before she started seeing all that success to try to, get that pendulum where you are true to who you are as an artist, and you're also hitting those markers without being cheesy, without being cliche. And there's, it's it's a learning curve, and it's working with the right people who can help support that and keep helping you make the right decisions in your songwriting and production as well. And if you want to chime into that.
I agree with everything you said.
I was like, I'll answer that.
Thank you.
My answer says, I missed the beginning of the chat. However, as producer, should you specialize or be able to do a few genres?
I think as a producer and as an artist, you got to know what you're good at, and you got to know your weaknesses. When someone asks me for music, I pretty much will say I'm capable of doing anything, but I will also be straight up and tell them where my sweet spots are and where they're not. But I know that whatever someone needs, I can deliver, because I have collaborators that cover my low points. You know, I'm not like the best hip hop producer, but I work with cats that are. I'm not the best when it comes to orchestral stuff, as we've discussed, but I work with dudes that are. So I think pinpointing the areas and being super honest about where your deficiencies are, get them covered. Work with people.
That's great. Yeah.
The other thing is, like, it's okay to let an opportunity go by. You know, if someone asked me to produce like a 10-song hip hop album and they don't have a big enough budget for me to work with someone else who might help deliver it, I might have to say, dude, you might be better suited to work with this other cat because he's better at it than I am, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think it just serves everyone better if you're honest about what you can do well.
Smart. I think there was something you just said about, now it's like in my brain and now it's gone. So I'll come back to that.
Babies do that to you.
Oh my God. Yeah, I forget what I was just going to say about that. Production, producer, oh well, we'll move on. I'll remember. Okay, so I'm going to bring out some of the songs that people have shared, and then you can give your feedback just, you know, in terms of how's the production working, licensable, not licensable, all those things.
Let me grab some headphones real quick.
Okay, I'll grab these links.
All right.
Okay, so I'm just going to put the link in the chat. This first one is by Gary, and it's Just Watch Me. Just Watch Me. And then if you guys are listening, you can click the link here since the audio is not shareable.
Did I lose my chat window? Where are you guys? Oh, there you are. Okay. So I'm just listening super quickly. I think sonically that could be pitched today. I think some of the sounds, especially that horny synth sound, could maybe be taken a little bit further from what it originally sounds like. In all honesty, the writing to me sounds a little bit contrived, like it's trying to get into a fashion commercial. But with that said, it sounds like it probably could be in one. So it's not like, I stress authenticity all the time, but I watch commercials and hear contrived music that sounds like the last commercial and the last commercial and the last commercial all the time. So if that's what you're going for, I think you're getting there for sure.
Okay.
And I'm sorry right now to everyone if I sound like a jerk. I told Sonnet earlier I'm incapable of lying when I listen to other people's music. I wish I was capable of it.
No, and I said don't hold back. Everybody really wants that honest feedback. So,
maybe I wish I was a little bit better when it came to diplomacy, perhaps. Oh. And do I need to mute myself when I'm listening to these?
No, we can't hear anything. You're good.
Cool.
Can I say something, Sonnet?
Oh, yeah, please.
Thank you. Hey, Scott. Yeah, this is Gary. I wrote it. And yeah, it was contrived. And so, yeah, you picked up on that. That's cool. And I had a question for you, though. I'm a top liner, and I work with a lot of different producers. And I wanted to get your feedback as a producer. When I'm working with these guys and girls, what can I do to make the project easier on them? You know what I mean? Because I have my ideas of the song, they have their ideas. How can I better work with them to get that gel going?
Um, I think with singers and top liners that aren't producers per se, I
Mm-hmm.
think it's always helpful to come in with an idea of what you want. So I don't have to start from scratch and say, let's get some 808s together and figure this out. It's always helpful when everyone knows the basics of recording. So if you have an idea, you can track it at your house and send me a file that I know I'll be able to import into a session and is going to read well, as opposed to me needing to sort of figure out an hour in the week where you can get over and do a scratch. I think that's my favorite collaborators in terms of people who are not producers are the ones who have learned the bare minimum to become more efficient collaborators.
Mm.
Cool. And I do come in with a bare minimum, and that's enough usually. I mean,
Yeah, I don't think you want to come in with too much, because if you're working with this other dude, you respect their creativity too, and you want to let them come up with some cool shit too.
cool. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Great question and answer. Good job. Okay, I'll just paste that link again. This is called Not Every Day is Easy.
So conceptually, I really like the song. I like the lyrical content. From a production standpoint, I don't think it's ready to go. I think this is something that I'm weirdly meticulous about, but I would melodyne that whistle a little bit. And I think there's room for improvement on the vocal melody. I think you could develop it a little bit, but I do think the idea is clever, and I think it's definitely worth finishing, but I don't think it's finished.
Awesome. That's great. That's what people need to hear. Okay, I just posted the next one. That is Fight by Nick.
I think there's something to that. I think the sounds are pretty modern and usable. I think, by the way, I'm about to make a comment on the mix. I'm a feel guy. I mix and I write and I produce with feel, and I'll have my engineers say, dude, this is a disaster sonically, and I'll have to like go in and tweak stuff. So take what I say with a grain of salt. But I think it's well balanced, but I think each sound could be developed a little bit more, just a little bit more punch. But there's definitely bones of each of those sounds to work with. I like the melody. I like where you bring in counter melodies. That first one, I think, could be a little bit more complementary to the vocal melody, but I like where it comes in. I like the instrument. I think there's good shit there. Sorry about my language.
It's good. It keeps it real.
Yeah.
I love how to the point your feedback is. Really appreciate that.
What's that?
I really like how to the point your feedback is.
I think I should do this every week. I love the accolade. It's really nice.
Well, it's super helpful I think everybody can chime in that it's just great to get really honest, to the point feedback from somebody who's in that world all the time.
And
Mark
again,
says, let's do this every week.
but I do want to stress that this is my subjective feedback, and
Yeah.
I have had some level of success at it, but as I said, 5% of the time I win these jobs, and that's what success is. So I lose a whole lot, and people disagree with me, but this is my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that that's across the board. Nobody has all the answers, but outside perspective is always helpful. Okay, next song. I think this is Bravery is the Beginning. Allison and Lauren.
The song sounds nice. It's got a nice melody. I like that there's kind of a 3 against 4 feel in the waltz against the 4/4 feel. Cadence-wise, I don't know how great it'll work to picture, to be perfectly honest, but I do like it. I think sonically, especially when the drums come in, it doesn't sound completely dialed in. And without listening more, I don't know that I could give specifically what I would change. But the soundscape that you created at the beginning with the keys is very nice and lush.
Great. Last one by Faris. And this is called Grow But Never Change. And here is the link. Oh, and Allison says thank you.
My pleasure. Tell Lauren Spring I say what's up. I know that chick.
Oh, cool.
Okay, this Dropbox, right? I like that. Cool little Tom York-like vocal performance. Melodies are cool. Production sounds cool. One thing I would comment on, this sounds a little anti-artistic, but honest. There's some rhythmic percussion element at the beginning. It sounds a little too much like clipping that may have happened during compression or some sonic issue. I think it's artistically intended, but if someone hears that off the bat, they might not even get to the rest of the song. Just from like a strictly administrative licensing point of view, someone might say, oh, they fucked that up when they bounced it down. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's what it is because it's in perfect time and it's cool, but not everyone will hear that.
Good point. I like that. Okay, so we have one last question, and then I want to let you go. But it's let's see, we've got Ernest says, I've noticed in a lot of these recordings, there's pretty long pretty long intros. Advice I've always heard for getting on the radio is don't bore us, get to the chorus. Does that apply to sync as well?
No, it's the exact opposite. I think you and I actually had this conversation a few weeks back that especially in 2018 with licensing, it's like, give me as many different parts as is humanly possible. I don't care when we get to the chorus, just make every part that leads up to it super interesting, super syncopal, and super different than the last one. So I agree. When I was writing as a, like, trying to be an artist, let's say in the early 2000s, and I got feedback, everyone's like, verses are too long, get to the first chorus, get me into the song. No one cares about that. It's really just making every part as good as the chorus so that you don't have to get there sooner.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yes.
Okay, it's the opposite, huh? I've been trying to tamp down my intros and transitions for years. Yeah, but the point
it's conflicting information for sure, you know, because if you talk to like an A&R at a label who's trying to get you on the radio, maybe that's still the case. I can't really attest to that. But for sync, I don't think they care if they don't hear a vocal for 45 seconds, as long as what they're hearing is super cool.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that that's just also a testament to the music that we're listening to now. It's like everything is a hook. Everything is an important part. It's not just like listen to this verse and then get to the cool part. Everything has to be relevant.
Everything's the cool part. Totally.
Okay, I'd love to share your email address, or, you know, I'm sure people would love to get in touch with you.
Yeah, should I just type it here?
Sure. And then say it out loud for anybody who doesn't get the chat.
Sure. It's slfeldman1@gmail.com. Is that right? slfeldman1@gmail.com. Yeah.
Great.
And if for some reason you're trying to get in touch with me and cannot, Sonnet, you have my information, yeah?
Sure. Yeah, exactly. Happy to connect. So thank you for taking the time to give such great feedback and to share such straightforward, honest advice from your perspective and, you know, your side of the world of music, which is really helpful.
My absolute pleasure. It was fun.
Great. All right, guys, have an amazing Thursday. I think it is Thursday, and we'll see you all soon.
Later.
Bye.
Thanks.